Hello, welcome to the Cinema Savvy Movie Podcast, the channel for film reviews, discussions, and everything in between. I'm Chris Garner, and joined again for this review, George, you're back. For anyone who hasn't been keeping up to date with Facebook or Twitter with the channel, you've unfortunately, with work commitments and college and stuff, you can't make it to all the reviews now, but we still wanted to keep you a part of the channel because you helped build it from the ground up from the very beginning, so you're going to be jumping in on little reviews like this, and we definitely want to get you back for the Spectre review towards the end of this month and like all the Star Wars stuff going on in December. So thank you for helping me out with this review. This was a little one, in fact. This obviously, if you've seen the title, we're doing a review on Macbeth. We got this about a week ago, I think, wasn't it? But in America it's not out until early December, so we're a bit earlier on this one, but we wanted to get a review out for it because I still think it's definitely worth talking about.
Yeah, and I mean, first of all, I did say I'm happy to be back. There's commitments, which is a shame, and in all honesty, it's a bit of a fluke. I've seen Macbeth. I had a lecture off ill, and there was a show in 20 minutes when I left college, so I just got in time for it. Otherwise, I wouldn't have probably seen it till today or tomorrow or something bizarre. So it's actually nice to see a film and release date again. But yeah, about the Spectre stuff, you kind of killed my I'll be back in 00 several weeks strip, but that might be better off without it. But I definitely intend on being there for Spectre. I've got the week off after it comes out, so I'm going to be buzzing for that. The hype has already begun. I've been writing essays on Bond. I've put my 23 films together, which was an impossible mission because there's so many good ones, but the Bond hype is up and I will be back for them.
Yeah, definitely, and I mean, you're the Bond aficionado out of all of us, so I'm definitely going to need you to rely on for some points during that because, as I say, I'm not a huge Bond fan, but that's probably going to be the biggest film before Star Wars, I would imagine, that and Hunger Games, so we definitely want to talk about that. But today, obviously, we're going to be reviewing Macbeth, as we said.
All hail Macbeth that shall be king hereafter.
I feel now the future. Hail, king that shall be.
My dearest love, Duncan comes here tonight.
Look like the innocent flower, but with the serpent under it.
All hail Macbeth that shall be king hereafter.
To me, from the start, like I know when the film starts off, it says that it was filmed for. I think they helped with the production. They were one of the studios behind it. So I want to say that this was a fairly small budgeted movie compared to many of the other big ones that come out. But it's also a movie that I'm not sure how well it'll do. I know that Shakespeare has a big fan base, not just in the UK, but I know that in America Shakespeare's very big and a lot of people like his plays and stuff like that. But this really, in recent times, to my knowledge, has been the first time we've seen a Shakespeare story on the big screen since. I know Baz Luhrmann did a sort of interpretation of Romeo and Juliet, but in terms of taking itself seriously and being true to the time in it was set, this is the only one I can think of.
Yeah, and the thing is, it's not something hard to sell because Shakespeare's compulsory. Everyone that's been to school knows it. Everyone can know the basis of probably 3 plays minimum. Then you go over to America, where apparently it's still very big over there. So it's one of them that's got this broad audience. And I think with this Macbeth film, when it was announced, I was very interested. Not only had I just finished doing it at school, it was the cast of Michael Fassbender and Marion Cottilard. And Michael Fassbender's going to draw money, I think. I mean, this has got a December release in America, and I believe it's a week or two before Star Wars, so I've got a feeling that it will get a decent weekend there. And again, I think it will destroy the budget. I mean, I don't think it's I'm guessing it's going to have been about 10-15 mil, because it feels like a big independent film, and that was what the gist I got of it straight away. You've got almost a rookie director. You've got a lot of new people, unknowns, but then you just have this stellar cast, and I think that's the drawing board for the film. But it was interesting because I'm not the biggest of Shakespeare's fan, which I've told you, but Macbeth's kind of one of the most interesting stories. So going into it was one I was looking forward to.
Yeah, and I mean, I saw this last Friday. I saw it at a Friday evening, and the screening was absolutely dead. I think there were 2 other people in the cinema besides myself. So maybe I don't know really know what else was out that people would be going to see at that time, or maybe it'll be a word of mouth thing. Or again, maybe Shakespeare's not everyone's cup of tea, because it is. If you're not into it and you haven't really studied it that much at school, I can imagine this being an incredibly hard sit. Like, I can't imagine a bunch of people going to say, yeah, let's go and see Macbeth, because you do have to kind of concentrate on it. The language, for people that aren't familiar with it, would be quite complicated to get their head around, and I can see a lot of people zoning out right from the beginning if it's not their thing. But to me, I think I've said this before on the channel, Shakespeare's one of my favourite writers of all time. Absolutely love all of his plays. I love the language. Studied it at school when I did English. So I've always had an affinity for Shakespeare, and I love seeing the plays as well. And when this was announced and the first trailers started to come out, and Fassbender was cast as Macbeth, Marion Cotillard's Lady Macbeth, I was hyped from the instant. And to be honest, Macbeth was my second most anticipated film of this year, behind Star Wars. The trailers came out, it looked very much like Braveheart style. It was taking itself seriously, looked cold, aggressive, and everything that the play of Macbeth should be. And I guess if I'm going to sort of go into my brief thoughts into it, I was actually sort of massively let down by this film. Really, really brief thoughts. I thought that the cinematography was great, and I really enjoyed the score, but to me, where it fell short was, I thought it was a bad adaptation. Now, this to me, before I went to see the film, I actually read the play, and I also had an audio book version of the play playing in the background as well. So I familiarised myself with it before going in. And then to see it on the big screen, a lot of stuff was changed, a lot of stuff was moved around and tweaked. And honestly, even with like the performances of Fassbender and Cotillard, I was really let down by the performances, to be honest. I think that they were very much one note. There was not much passion showed through in it. A lot of the lines that are meant to be humorous towards the start were just said very deadpan. And I don't think that that's a fault of the actors themselves, because we've seen these actors do great things before. What I think it is possibly the direction. I mean, at the end of it, the director is the one who says, no, can you do that line again, make it a bit more, I'm going to sound like George Lucas now, faster, more intense, or, be a bit more emotional in the delivery here. So I think what it is, it's down to the direction, where this particular adaptation of the play didn't really hit home for me as much as I hoped it would.
See, with me, this is when you told me you're reading the script. I was kind of, I won't lie, I was on my own at the cinema. It was an empty screen, and it was like 11 o'clock in the morning. And because I know the play, but I despise the dialogue. It's really hard for me just to like apprehend it. And the thing with me, because I'm remembering it of 4 years ago, it was very much that I remember everything that happens. I remember the key scenes. I know I recognise two big things that were changed. And for me, it was almost, I was trying to watch this film almost, it's a sort of silent. I think I was messaging you as it was happening.
Yeah,
saying,
you were, yeah.
I was like, I'm loving this, but I think this is the difference, because I'm almost a non-casual fan. I'm there to see the film, and you're the Shakespeare fan. I think this is where it completely kind of like interlocks into itself, because I love Fassbender and I love Cotillard, but the things that I noticed were going, there's no spoiler section, so I'm going to say it almost up front, is they changed the Lady Macbeth. Is this the blood on my hands scene? There's no blood on her hands.
Yeah.
And the other thing I noticed was that you told me as well. I remember it straight away. I was like, Macbeth didn't have a tent; he had a castle.
And that was one of the biggest problems for me, because up until that point they'd done such a good job of framing it in this very real, like obviously like the Scottish Highlands and everything like that. It looked absolutely gorgeous. It was completely in keeping with it, but a lot of the style from the play itself, and there's even some moments where key plot points and character moments come from the actual physical setting of the castle. Macbeth is a lord. He's the I forgot what he is now. Thane of Cawdor, that's right. And before that, he's Thane of Glamis, isn't he? So he's well-to-do, and he has a castle of his own, and he's well respected by everyone. And when they actually commit the murder in the play, and it's in just sort of this bedchamber in the castle, as soon as they do it, they're hearing echoes throughout the castle. They're hearing like knocks from doors deep into the castle, and it's making them paranoid. And a lot of the moments of that paranoia and like dreading the deeds that they've just done comes from the actual setting of the castle, and they say at the start of the play that when they welcome the king there, it's this lovely, picturesque, beautiful castle, and when they commit this deed, the castle itself almost seems to change in terms of its setting. It becomes like a haunted castle. Later on, you get the spirit of Banquo, so the castle and setting itself changes, and you just got none of that with this. You do get a castle later on in it when he becomes king, but before then, you're right, they just put the king up in like a little put-me-up tent. There's like a chapel and a few tents, and that's it. And to me, that just wasn't... They were going for this huge scope, and you just lost that instantly because it felt really cheap and just sort of like tacked on. And I think a lot of the sort of like not meaning, but the style of it was lost because they chose to go with that.
Yeah, and I'm not really sure what they were trying to do with it, because when they show that castle for the first time, they've got this great establishing shot, and it's kind of built that this is the king's castle. And I've got a bad feeling they only did that. I think they literally put them in tents just so the king has the only castle, which it doesn't work, because everyone with common sense knows that there are dozens and dozens of castles, especially in that era. I mean, like by me, there's Warwick Castle, which is like 10 minutes away in the car. There's a Kenilworth Castle 20 minutes away. There's castles everywhere. So it was just very bizarre that they did that one change. But if I'm just going to kind of talk about Fassbender briefly,
Yeah.
With me, that hyping up the Steve Jobs film, which I'm looking forward to, and it's got actually fantastic reviews, which will start coming out. But he suited Macbeth so much. I mean, when you look at the kind of persona, he's this kind of like rugged warrior that's working his way up almost. That's essentially all he's doing. And then I think he's, when you're looking at casting, he does it. When that first poster came out of him with the beard and the eyes and makeup, you're like, great, he's going to nail it. And I think, to me, he did a perfect job. But again, that's because I was so not bored of the language, because I just don't get anything from it. He kind of gave this solid performance, but I'm starting to understand from where you take it of the persona of it, because the one bit I do like, which is arguably one of his most powerful scenes, is when he's saying like "this scorpion's in my mind" or something. But that's one of
That's
the
one
only
of my favourites too.
and that's one of the only kind of, not memorable, but that's one of the really great bits of him. And I still think I wouldn't be surprised if he got nominated, whether it's this or Jobs. It's more likely to be Jobs, I think. But I think when this comes out in America, because they love him so much, I think they'll full on rally behind him, a bit like when they did Shakespeare in Love, where it's a film that might not, maybe should not be up for awards, but it's going to get some.
Yeah, and that bit you mentioned there with the scorpions, and that scene was showed in the trailer. That was, to be honest, the part of the film where I really started to get behind his performance. Until then, as I said, and I think I explained this to you as well, the only way I can sort of describe the relationship between Macbeth and the king at the start is sort of like Game of Thrones with Ned Stark and King Robb. If you watch the first few episodes of season 1 of Game of Thrones, you immediately get the sense that Ned Stark's this well-respected soldier, Warden of the North, and he has a long-lasting respect and friendship with the king when he greets the king. In fact, it's very much like Macbeth at the start. When he greets the king, they have that banter with each other, and the audiobook version of Macbeth I was listening to before I saw the film did that so well, and it was literally just voices and sound effects. And again, it's all in the delivery. To be honest with Michael Fassbender's performance in this, from the beginning, he's the stoic, mean-looking, sort of like haunted soldier. And when he's with Banquo, who's his best friend on the moors when they meet the witches, again, I never got a sense of any close friendship with him or laughter or banter. And with the king as well, it still felt very distant. So as such, I didn't see much of a change in his character. How Macbeth ended the film when he fights Macduff at the end to how he was at the beginning was almost exactly the same character for me. He never showed signs of that humanity or that levity to his character at the beginning, and as such I didn't see any kind of transition between his friendly persona to the monster he becomes in the middle and the end of the play.
And one thing I want to say, I don't know if you know this, there was an interview with the director last week, and he said this Macbeth is suffering from PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. You know, this kind of army one.
Yeah.
And then when they said that, I was a bit like, oh, but this is after the film, and They don't say it in the film, which they shouldn't do because it's got nothing to do with it. But you kind of get this vibe of him where they'll show him in the battlefield, but especially the witches, where he almost just stands still, like just disillusioned. So after hearing that, I got these kind of the sense of it. But I was there like it doesn't make any difference though. He doesn't need it. Like it's an interesting take, but it just doesn't offer anything more, especially if they're not going to say it.
Mm. Yeah, definitely. And before we get into the other performances, I know you've mentioned this before, but about how you're not into the Shakespeare language. So, in terms of that, did that bother you in the film still, or seeing it played out in front of you, did that help? Because to me, with Shakespeare, like you can read it and deconstruct the language, but you really only get the sort of meaning and the power behind it once you see it performed on stage, or whether it be a film like this. So did you still have the same thoughts about the language while watching the film and find it hard to get to grips with, or did you find it a bit easier?
It was quite tough because I really struggled with it, and in a kind of non-twat way, it was just there too much. I mean, I know it's a Shakespeare film, but I was getting to it. I'd heard some people murmuring about the heavy Scottish accent, so I wasn't too bothered by that. I could still hear the words, but it was kind of like the really really memorable Shakespeare line, which I've forgotten, is, and I've said it already, is that blood on my hand. I thought the knife actually, the dagger scene was good, and it was interesting that the ghost carried it. Of that random kid that I don't think was in the Macbeth play.
No, no, it wasn't.
And I
think he imagines himself with the dagger in the play, himself holding the
yeah,
dagger himself, not anyone offering it to him. But
yeah,
I think that still worked for the film.
exactly. And then I liked the knife scene again. That was memorable. But to me, I'd only really hit me on the important parts. So when it was Macduff's family getting murdered and stuff, the way them conversations happened, but it was always the small talk. I don't struggle with it because I can understand it, but it's just, you know what I mean. It's just not really my sort of thing.
Yeah,
But
yeah. I just wondered if at all it was changed by seeing it on the big screen in terms of a film.
no, I just prefer reading that language than seeing it on screen. But it's
Yeah.
not really my thing to moan because they're doing an adaptation.
Yeah, that's true. And we'll go back to some more of the performances now. To me, the strongest one of this film, strongest performance, was Marion Cotillard. I will not badmouth, but I can criticise more or less everyone else in the film. But I thought her performance was phenomenal all the way through, right from her opening scene where she delivers that monologue. And I think you were messaging me as well when you were in the cinema, and I asked, do they keep the monologues in? And thankfully they do. Because there's a lot of sort of like one shots where the camera just like stays on her face. It reminded me of Les Mis with Anne Hathaway's character, where the camera will just stay on the face, so you see all the emotion play out throughout the entire scene. And I thought she did a really good job. Obviously, as we said, like with the whole blood on the hands thing, they cut a lot out of that scene, which is a real shame because that's one of my favourite bits from the play. But I thought she was strong all the way through. From the very beginning, you get the sense that she's that strong woman who's really the force that corrupts Macbeth from the beginning, and then up until the end where her character completely flip-flops to the other side and she becomes very weak and haunted at the things she's done. I thought she was fantastic, and I don't know whether this particular film will be up for any Oscars. It may be up for cinematography, but I'm not sure. I would quite like to see Marion Cotillard get a nod for Best Supporting Actress from this, but I don't know whether she would or not.
Yeah, and the thing is, not a degrading way. With the best supporting actress, they never really hype it up. I mean, it's quite bizarre, but when you get to the Academy, they are always, always, always hyping up who's going to win Best Actor, who's going to win Best Supporting. Every year they'll say Christoph Waltz or Daniel Day-Lewis, but with the women, in all honesty, they only ever talk about Kate Blanchett and Meryl Streep, and they always win it when they're up for it. So
Yeah.
it's one of them where you don't get an awful lot of talk about who's going to get nominated. So from what I've seen this year, Marion Cotillard could perfectly be up for Best Supporting Actress, but then again, we don't know what's coming out, and I've got a feeling that suffragette film is probably going to take all the acting awards away.
Yeah, and I got a trailer for that during The Martian, I think, and I was just looking at that trailer and thinking this has got Oscar nominations written all over it, hasn't it, from the acting or whatever, which is a shame because I think that Marion Cotillard deserves to get a look in, but we'll have to see when the Oscars come out. But yeah, I can't fault her performance at all in this. I thought she was definitely the standout one, way, way more so than Fassbender or anyone else. We can talk about the supporting cast as well because there are a few others. most notable for me was probably David Thewlis as King Duncan. Now, I'll always say that David Thewlis is one of my favourite actors. He doesn't do a lot of stuff. He's done a bit more this year when we went to see Legend. I didn't know he was a part of that film, so when I saw him in it, and he's in it quite a lot as well, I thought he was fantastic in this film. So when I saw from the trailers that he was playing the King, I was instantly hyped because he's always a great actor. I really didn't care for him all that much in this film, to be honest. I never got any sense of kingly qualities to him, and again, I think that was in the direction of the delivery they had to go for. Like you get a bit at the start where he's in the tent where he executes the previous Thane of Glamis, I want to say, and besides that, just not much from him. Also, his accent was all over the place. Again, you were talking about the Scottish accents, and for the most part, I thought everyone was completely on the money, and I loved it. But his accent was, flip-flopping all over the place, and it was a bit strange in parts and didn't sound Scottish. But yeah, again, I think it was just sort of in the characterizations and the delivery. I never got that regal sense to him where he was a respected king. You just sort of see him at the banquet getting drunk and stuff, and if you asked me to pick out the king and I knew nothing about it, I wouldn't be able to tell you who it was. I think that's all down to the direction, though, again, to be honest.
Yeah, and with it, it's quite a shame because I like seeing him and stuff, and he's always had this distinct accent. And then the Scottish stuff, it didn't really work too much, but then you just said it, he was there just kind of moping around drunk with his son at the party, and it just didn't really get. Just the only kingly thing about him was the weird sort of scarf he had on, and I just didn't really get what's happening. And then, however, I want to say his death scene was done very well in the sense that it was brutal as shit. And the next day, it was so obvious Macbeth killed him. I mean, even to them, he just went and murdered the so-called witness guards. So, it was a bit strange, but it's exactly what you said to me before, actually. From the play, I remember the son just runs off. He doesn't know Macbeth killed him, whereas in this, he sort of walks in and sees it all.
Yeah, and you talking about the violence as well, this film definitely is very violent. You get that scene where the king is stabbed to death, the very, very brutal fashion, which I really enjoyed because I think that's what the story needs. You also get the battle scene at the start, which I thought was great. It's filmed in a very distinct way. It uses a lot of slow-mo, and sometimes that can take you out of the film, but I think because it was done in a stylized and effective way, that worked for it. People are burnt at the stake, which is very sort of, you watch it and you go like, oh shit, that just happened. And then you get the battle again at the end, so the violence is all the way through it, but I think that helped the style of the film. Again, I didn't have a problem with the cinematography or in themes like that, but jumping a bit forward here, and then we'll come back to the direction and the cinematography itself, because I think that deserves being talked about. But one of my least favourite changes to this was where after the king is murdered and Macbeth's in the bedchamber and he's got the dagger and the blood all over his hands, the king's son Malcolm walks in and witnesses what Macbeth's just done, and for some reason Macbeth just lets him live and the son flees away. In the play itself, what happens is that Macbeth covers it up. The son didn't see Macbeth kill the king or anything like that, but he knows that something's wrong and something suspicious, and he thinks, well, if my father's been murdered, then maybe I'm a target too. So he decides to flee for England. And I think that makes a lot more sense in the play, because here I was just watching it and thinking, why wouldn't Macbeth kill the only witness of the murder? Why wouldn't the son run away and wake everyone up and tell them that Macbeth's killed the king? Because he would have the evidence, because all blood all over him. I really don't understand that change. I guess it was just a sort of an extra revenge plot where the son sees it, goes away, brings an army and takes him out at the end. But it was just nonsensical to me. I was just watching it and thinking, why would you change this? I think it makes a lot more sense as it pans out in the play, where the son puts two and two together, flees, and then returns at the end.
Yeah, and another thing leading up to that scene, I thought of this earlier, actually, when I saw it at the cinema. They have this episode 3 thing going on from Star Wars when they're plotting to kill him, and then it keeps cutting between Lady Macbeth in her tent and Macbeth in his. And I was literally there this reminds me of too much of Anakin and Padme, just before he kills Mace Windu. So some really weird poetic thing going on there. But
you're talking about the rumination scene from episode 3.
Yeah, and that's this vibe I got of it, which was bizarre because I don't remember the play like completely, but I just don't remember anything like that happening.
Mm.
But it was just bizarre, the whole killing scene. I mean, if you're Malcolm, you'd have told a guard you're the king's son.
Yeah.
They're gonna believe you. And the fact that he just disappears and then he comes back at the end of the film, where he's just, he's just chilling with Macduff on the top of a mountain. Like, how does Macduff even know you're there?
Mm. I think a lot of the stuff that was changed was, or apart from that one I just mentioned, because that was just nonsensical to me, but even at the end as well with Birnam Wood, I believe in the play, when the witches prophesies that Birnam Wood will come to Dunsinane, what happens is that the troops each cut down a branch from the wood and march forward with the branch, which from a distance from the castle looks like the very forest itself is moving. It's a bit far-fetched, but it works with the prophecy, whereas in this, they just sort of set fire to it, don't they? And it's the ashes and the flames of the wood sort of encroach on the castle itself. Doesn't really make a whole lot of sense with the prophecy, but it does make for one sweet looking end fight, which I will be honest was a pretty badass fight with Macbeth against the villain from Mission Impossible Rogue Nation.
Yeah, I mean, when he was in it, I thought it's Macduff, isn't it?
Yeah.
When he revealed him, I was like, oh shit, it's him. And
Yeah.
then he's like screeching, like throwing up, crying when the Duncan's dead. And it was a bit over the top, but when it got to that fight at the end, it was incredible. I mean, the way that they kill Macduff's family, if you think Game of Thrones was bad with Stannis, this was almost painful.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, the whole of the family, and they have this sort of sweeping shot which cuts to it, which, is great because if they'd have kept it on the camera, and that'd have been like a horrific scene. And I don't know if it's pushing the limit or not, but there's these comparisons where Macbeth was just so like mentally disabled in that scene, and that's what really makes Marion Cottilard kill herself.
Yeah.
But going into the directing, I want to talk about the kind of landscape and the cinematography, which they filmed it all on location. I just thought it was incredible because it pulls off the 1500s look.
Yeah, definitely, and I thought choosing it to film it on location makes such a difference as well, especially with the scope of a play like Macbeth. There were some shots that were a bit iffy. I don't know if this was direction or just the camera itself, but it felt very sort of Man of Steel style with the handheld camera, and it was got a bit shaky in places, especially towards the beginning. As well, that was a scene that was added in the play. It's only hinted at that Macbeth and Lady Macbeth had a child that died at some point, but in this film we see it outright, and I thought that was quite a nice inclusion and added a nice little theme throughout the story. But like in that bit, the camera got a bit shaky. In the battle scenes, a lot of it was filmed up very close, and there were points, especially in the final fight, where they're both in similar style armor, both with swords and the flames in the background, that at times it was a bit difficult for me to see who was on what side of the fight, who was winning, who was losing. But overall, I think, apart from the performances of the actors themselves, I thought the rest of the direction was done very well. Cinematography wise was absolutely flawless, and I definitely think they should get a nod. Each shot is like a painting, and I think there's one towards the end with the burning wood where the castle's on the left and you just see the forest on the right, and it looks incredible on a big screen. But like recommending it like that, I don't think that this film cries out to see it on a big screen. I think you could definitely wait until it's released on Blu-ray or DVD or on Netflix or whatever. But there are some shots like that are incredible to witness, especially the battle scene at the start as well. It was great to watch. To be honest, the direction for me, as I keep saying, just comes down to, I don't know if it's a lack of understanding of the play, but I think it's a lack of understanding of the characterizations of the characters from the play that got a bit lost in translation to the big screen. But I think that regardless of what I think of this adaptation, I think that Justin Cazale, the director, has proven himself a competent director enough to get Assassin's Creed, which will be coming out next year, which I'm really looking forward to. I love that video game series. And so for me, as well as being hyped for this film to see it as a Shakespeare fan, I was also going into this with the curiosity of seeing what Assassin's Creed might turn out to be like, and with the location shooting as well, and we've seen set photos of Assassin's Creed and the filming it in Spain as well. It looks awesome. And in the battle scenes as well with the slow motion, I was picturing what Assassin's Creed may look like, and I think that will turn out to be really, really good. Again, that will be starring Michael Fassbender and Marion Cotillard as well. So in terms of the cinematography and the setting, location shooting, and everything like that, I thought it was brilliant. There was a scene with Macbeth as well when he's going crazy towards the end where it's a time lapse where he gets out of bed and he just sort of stands in place in like a catatonic state, and the time speeds up, goes from night to day, and he's just standing there like rocking backwards and forwards. I thought stuff like that worked really well. It just came down to sort of getting the best out of the actors that he was working with.
Yeah, I think cinematographer as director, I liked it, but again, with me, it just comes down to because I'm not really on with the dialogue. It's not ever been like my strongest suit when going into the film for it. But Assassin's Creed wise, I mean, I liked the first few games, and again, it was one of them where when you're watching this, you can picture how perfect that film's going to be if it's pulled off right. And especially with they've got a bit of a cast going now, and I think it's going to be very good when it hits. But I mean, if they keep it 15, which I want them to, I don't have a feeling they will, because I think a lot of kids like Assassin's Creed. So it's going to be interesting to see whether that how tamed down. But I think this film is going to look exactly like that, maybe just a few hundred years earlier and in different costumes. But I've got a lot of hope for that, especially like dialogue wise, they can use English too.
Yeah, definitely, and it'll be interesting to see. I know we're going off on a tangent here a bit, but whether they will continue to use Fassbender if it becomes a franchise, because the Assassin's Creed games are famous for new ancestor, new setting each game. So whether they'll use Fassbender just in different locations and time periods, or whether they'll get a new lead actor each time, we'll have to find out. I'm not actually sure if the director's using all of the same crew he used on this film, or if because it's a bigger budget movie that he's been given a new team to bring that to life. But I think if he did use the same team, it would work very well. I mean, we've seen that he can work with them here. We can talk about the score before we sort of like close off here, because I think this will be, well, we've actually been going for like over half hour now, which is surprising. We thought this would be a short review, but the score, I believe you said, was done by the director's brother. He hasn't done anything before. I thought the music worked perfectly for this film. It's very sort of disturbing and macabre, and it has like sounds of the bagpipes from like the classic Scottish sound mixed with like violins. It's very discordant, and it plays mostly in the battle scenes and the intense scenes, but I think for when it is played in the film, it works incredibly well.
Yeah, and it's that opening shot when the sort of writing's coming on, telling you about the context. It's just the harrowing music, and I thought it was great. So I hope he brings him back for Assassin's Creed. Whether he does or not is one thing, but I thought it was very distinct and it was very different. But it worked to the film when it needed it to.
Yeah, and for anyone that hasn't heard the song, it's I believe it's played in the second trailer for Macbeth anyway. It's very rare that you'll get a trailer that plays music that actually ends up in the actual film. That was like The Martian with me, with All Along the Watchtower, which I was hoping to hear in that film, but it never got put in. So I guess we've more or less talked about everything we can, so I think we should just go into like summing up our final thoughts now. Would we recommend the film? So if you want to go first, and then I'll just sort of close out.
I would recommend this film. If you hate Shakespeare, maybe give it a watch, because you'll hate Shakespeare because of the dialogue, and it's great except for that. If you like Shakespeare, you're probably going to see it anyway, so I can't really recommend it to you, but I thought it's a great film. Visuals were beautiful, and I want to see more from the director, which luckily we are, and it's probably in my top 10.
I wouldn't rate it that highly. I was quite let down by it. As I said, I was hyped it up massively. It was my second most anticipated of the year. I think they've probably done the best job they can of making it accessible for a modern audience in terms of a feature film, down to the cast they got for it and the sort of style of it, and sort of ramping up the battle scenes and everything to make it more appealing to a viewer. But as you said, if you're not a Shakespeare fan, or you've never read Shakespeare before, you've never been taught it in school, I think going in like a blind view into this film would be incredibly tough, and I think you would probably zone out just after the first scene. It's very stylized, and the language, as we said, is very archaic. It's very difficult to get to grips with. There's a lot of poetry, there's a lot of prose in there, which would be very tough for, I mean, even people that have studied it. I mean, you could study a single play of Shakespeare for years until you can get to grips with everything, but I think they probably did the best job they can with it, with making it accessible. My faults purely come down to being a fan of the play and a fan of Shakespeare. I didn't like some of the alterations they made, some of the changes. And I don't think that the actors were used to the best of their ability. I think that you could have got a greater sense of character and camaraderie and friendship at the beginning of the film, so that you could see a greater change in the character of Macbeth himself. But if you're looking at it from a pure film standpoint, the music's great, the action's great, cinematography is absolutely gorgeous, probably one of the best examples of cinematography this year in my opinion, and absolutely phenomenal performance from Marion Cotillard, which I hope gets some recognition. So it's a weird one for me. As I say, if you're not a fan of Shakespeare, I would probably give it a miss or wait until it comes out on DVD. I don't think it's a film that particularly cries out to be seen on the big screen. I don't think you'd lose everything, because, to be honest, it could almost be seen as like a direct-to-TV movie. Not to like badmouth the film in any way, it is very cinematic in its scope, but it's just not one that begs to be seen on the big screen, I don't think. So it's a cautious recommendation from me. I didn't enjoy it as much, but I don't think it's a bad film by any stretch of the imagination. It was just because I'm familiar with the play and really love the play that I think I was let down by certain aspects of it.
Life's but a walking shadow. Honor, love, friends, but in their stead, curses.
But that is basically our review on Macbeth. I think we've talked about it to death now. I don't think we can mention anything else. So be sure to rate, like, comment, subscribe. Get involved with the channel. Videos are going to be coming much more regularly now. So you can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/cinemasavvy. We're on Twitter at cinema_savvy. And we're also on Letterboxd at letterboxd.com/cinema_savvy. I think our review for the main show next week will be Everest. I'll have to confirm that before we do the video. I know that's been out for a few weeks for us. It's been out in America, but I think that's a film that we can talk about, and that will be with Tate again. So until then, George, thank you very much for helping me out with this review, coming back to the channel. Hopefully get you back bit more often as well for some other films that are coming out this year, and until then, thank you very much for listening.